I'm just using that as an extreme measure.
I liked it. I'm signing up now.
What? No, but
This is the place to ask questions. This is the place to take notes. This is the place to learn strategy. Welcome to the Visible Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Lewis, and this is the podcast you'll love listening to week after week. After a history in Hollywood, I know what it takes to get visible. And as an entrepreneur, you don't have to keep feeling frustrated and trapped, not able to get yourself out there. Myself, my guests, and even my family are here to lift you up, guide you, and give you powerful ideas so that you can get your unique voice into the online space. Ready? Let's do it.
And action.
Hey everyone, so excited to be here with one of my favorite people in the world. I've been waiting for this month, which is press month, for like 6 months. Yes. So this is going to be so much fun. Welcome to the podcast, Kristin Marquet.
thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to be partnering with you on this exciting journey.
I know. Yay! This has been in the works for a while now. For those of you listening that don't know Kristin, she was on an episode last season, but this is before we knew that we were going to be collaborating in such a powerful way. So we decided that we wanted to write a book together, and we're like, okay, like what are we going to talk about? This is going to be great. And what we did is we really came together and blended my aspect, which is more like film, TV, live streaming, podcasting, summits, and all that kind of visibility strategy with her. And her background is fascinating. She's going to talk to you about it in just a second. But she's bringing all of her experience helping people get press. And I think that sometimes there's a misconception that visibility and press are the same thing, but they're really not. So that's why we're really excited about this book. You can absolutely reserve it. Just go to publicity.Jumpstart.com. But we're going to be diving in. So Kristin, give them a little bit of a taste of your background and what you've accomplished. And I just think that you're amazing. So just
Thank you so much. Well, I've been in the PR industry for 14 years now. Have had a few corporate positions, have had a bunch of startups, it's been a very interesting ride, to say the least. Kind of learning what works editorially, what works, what doesn't work, and I'm just really excited to share all my PR knowledge with our listeners today.
Absolutely. So we're going to be talking about a lot with like myths and mistakes that people make, but I also want to talk about like what the big differences are between visibility and PR and at what stages you should try to do what. Because from what you see online, it's pretty much there's people that are just coming out of the gate and then enrolling in these huge programs to get publicity, spending thousands of dollars when they're not necessarily even equipped. And what I don't want you to do as a listener, even if you've been in business a couple of years, is to go out there ill-equipped and then either have nothing land or be told like, well, we can't book you because of this, this, and this. So we want to avoid all those mistakes today. So let's start at the beginning, Kristin. In your opinion, what is the difference between visibility and press?
Well, it's pretty simple. Press or publicity is earned media. It's getting that third-party endorsement from an editor or a television producer or a podcast host. Whereas visibility has anything to do with getting seen. It's not just in the press. It could be social media, advertising. It could be speaking, teaching, anything where you're trying to build your brand awareness as well as your own thought leadership. So that's really the big difference between the two. And, visibility is so much more comprehensive. PR is just a tiny subset of marketing, or God, my professors at NYU would kill me saying that, or just kind of fall more within the communications realm. So
absolutely. I think what you're saying, to simplify that for the people that aren't really familiar with these terms, is that you're building the cupcake, which is your visibility, and then like the icing and all the toppings are the press and publicity, because you need that bottom layer in order to stack everything else on top of it.
Correct.
So Love it. Okay, so let's talk about some mistakes, especially, and let's relate this back to what we were just talking about. So if someone's out there wanting press, what are some of the mistakes that you see because they haven't done the groundwork first?
Okay, so I am fortunate enough to kind of, all my PR friends call me the unicorn, because I've been fortunate enough to have a very successful PR firm, but also be a contributor to Inc., Forbes, the Business Insider, Entrepreneur, and all the leading business publications.
Everything.
Right, exactly. And I'm not saying that to tout my horn, but I'm just saying it so that you guys know that I do have the credibility to speak about the publicity side as well as the editorial side.
Yeah, which is so unique.
Right. Very seldom do you find the two. You may find journalists that may transition to PR, later on, but very seldom do you find people that actually have both skill set and both experience.
Exactly.
So the biggest, and we actually talk about this at length in the book, the biggest mistake that I see entrepreneurs, new ones particularly, make when it comes to trying to draft their pitch and actually send it out is just sending out just a very generic, long-winded, salesy pitch. And it's all about them. And at the end of the day, nobody really gives a shit. They want to know, journalists want to know, television producers want to know how you're going to entertain, persuade, inform, educate, and ultimately add value and it makes their jobs easier when it comes to putting together a story. So give them something they can work with. If you developed a new app, that's great. Talk about the technology behind the app and talk about all the benefits that the app has, okay, and how it's going to serve a certain market better than, just talking about all the features. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs have a tendency to get benefits and features mixed up. And that's another thing that we really try to distinguish between the two in the book. It's just so critical that you understand the ultimate benefits that your product, service, blog, whatever, your own thought leadership can deliver to an audience versus the features of A, B, here are all the things that, my product does. Because that, like I said, at the end of the day, nobody really gives a shit.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, and I think on a small scale, I get pitches to be on my podcast every single day. And A, the subject line is never exciting. B, it's all about them and how amazing they are. It's them trying to qualify themselves to come on my show, which is nice, but there's no giving. There's no specific value where they've actually gone, okay, this is her audience. These are the 3 specific things that I can actually do to help her audience so that I'm interested in continuing to read the email. And that's just in a small little avenue, but I think this is the mistake where people feel like, oh, well, I can talk about anything. Well, I can do anything. Oh, I'm just a genius at everything. And it's like, you're not. And the best thing that you can do is niche it down and be so specific so that it's interesting. And this also applies to if you're submitting and writing articles, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful that you can give your opinion on something, but really it's about what value you're going to deliver to the audience, to the reader, to the viewer. Producers don't end up booking guests for the Today Show or Good Morning America based on how wonderful they are. It's based on something of value that they could actually contribute to the audience, whether you are a chef and you're going to be doing, like a healthy eating demonstration, or, you're a fitness trainer and you came up with this revolutionary new workout and you've had 50 celebrity clients that lost, 100 pounds in 5 minutes, whatever it is. You need to have, I'm just using that as an extreme measure.
I liked it. I'm signing up now.
Good. No, but the point is you need to deliver something that the end user is going to be able to use, whether it's to improve their life. The best way that I can actually describe it is it's an aspiration. what can your product or service provide that's an aspiration to your target audience? And you know what? I know that kind of sounds a little theoretical, maybe even like a platitude, but it really isn't. At the end of the day, you need to be able to articulate what you're going to do for somebody in, 200 words or less. And in the book, you and I discuss all those elements.
Yeah, we do, like crazy. Like when we specifically a couple weeks ago, because we're still in, as this is being recorded, not when it's aired, still in the editing stages, we're like, okay, how can we make this even more actionable? So we actually added action steps at the end of each chapter, because what we want for you is to be able to read it, stop after chapter 1, look through the action steps and be like, do I have all of this in place? No, then I'm not moving forward yet. And bust your buns, get that done, because with the way that we arc it, it's not just information. It's actually, if you implement it as you go, you will start landing gigs. And that's what we want for you. We want you to get featured in a bunch of different places. And so let's then move on to fear number 2, which is, I'm not big enough to get featured in these different places. And so people atrophy and they don't do anything because they feel like they're not qualified. Yeah,
for sure. That is a fear, but it's also a huge mistake or a misnomer. Mm-hmm. Just as long as you have something of value to deliver, you're never too small. I've had throughout the course of my career, especially earlier on when I had first just started my agency, I had represented very young fashion designers right out of design school. And they didn't have much of a brand. They had beautiful products and a great website, but there was really nothing out there in terms of online media coverage. At that point, social media wasn't even really a thing. I think Twitter was probably only like a year old. Instagram, Snapchat, and Pinterest weren't even around. So
I can't believe that. We're so old.
I am old. I'm going to be 40 next year.
I'm close behind you, girl.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But the thing that you want to do is you want to audit all of the things that you have to offer and come up with just a very short, chart for all the different ways that you can pitch yourself, whether it's a very specialized area of expertise or experience that you have, an obscure degree that you have, a very interesting benefit of a product or service, something that's proprietary, just something that is going to make the media say, oh, well, you know what, this is actually worth giving a second look to. And we actually talk about in the book, 50 different ways to come up, 50 different ways on how you can pitch your product or service. And
that's my favorite part of the book, because I'm such a total, I want the specific instructions. And so that's what I love, is how you break things down. And even the words to avoid, I love that part too. You can look at your article and be like, oh crap, oh crap, but it's things that a lot of people don't know. These are the things that you have to gradually learn. Remember that getting publicity and having the skill to pitch yourself and be right for it is a muscle. It has to be work to build up the strength. So when you first get started, your pitches are going to stink. That's okay. You have a much better chance if you read the book, but you're going to be general and a little bit obscure and not detailed. I tend to be a much more conversational writer. And so Kristin has to come back and be like, no, be specific and do this and this. So it's a muscle for all of us that we need to learn to work more and more. So a great exercise for you to start doing now, look at your mission statement, which we really define that formula in the book, list out your different categories of expertise, and then just start coming up with different headlines, blank ways to XYZ, just start really going through and being as specific as you can so your brain starts understanding this whole process. Do you agree?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, there really is a learning curve to drafting, a compelling press release or a compelling pitch. And I know that you guys are probably wondering, well, what's the difference? We actually talk about that in the book. I'm not going to talk about that here. And I'm not going to talk about when you should use one versus the other one. Again, like I said, we talk about all that in the book. But I actually think that so many people just get lost in the details of pretty much like the minutia of the nuances of their business, and they really don't know how to create something that's substantial and unique, create a compelling brand narrative, I guess more or less is what you would call it. And it's not rocket science, but it does take a while to develop those skills. The other thing is, just so that you guys know, I am not a great writer. Yes, I have degrees in English. I actually lectured on, PR writing at a huge university here in New York City. And, you don't have to be the next Shakespeare. Every word that comes out of your head doesn't have to be gold. You just have to write something that is, like I said, succinct, but compelling. And, at the end of the day, grammar and syntax are very important, but more of the brand narrative and the way that you're structuring your pitch is the most important thing.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that helps me too. I tend to be a more creative writer. And Kristin tends to be more of a technical writer, which is why we're a match made in heaven. But what you can start doing as well is do your rough draft and then go back and see where you can invoke the 5 senses. So for example, when I'm talking about on-camera confidence, I could be like, well, step 1, look in the camera, step 2, but instead I'm like, I remember the first time that I was on a film set and in front of the camera and my pits were sweating and the lights were so hot and the fear was so real, right? Doesn't sound the most perfect, but that makes you relate to me more. That makes you go, oh my gosh, I remember when I gave that student report and I peed my pants or whatever. So that's what you want to do to connect with your reader. And that includes whatever editor you're pitching to. So you can go back and go, okay, how can I make this a bit more visceral so that people can really understand what I'm talking about? And then go through and say, am I giving away enough?
Right.
Don't be afraid of over giving, especially when you're first starting out and getting these features, because instead of being boring and vague and someone going to the next BuzzFeed article, what you want is someone to be like, oh my gosh, those are so juicy. And that's one tip I can do right now. So then they click and they want to follow you and get on your list.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly what it's all about, and don't be afraid to give away your best stuff. That's a whole nother subject in itself, which we can talk about, in another interview or, video chat, whatever you want to call this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I agree. Don't be afraid to reveal too much. Because people, especially the media, they want to know that you're human and they want to know that you can be vulnerable, and, you kind of have to let people in. For a very long time, I was very, very standoffish, and I never, for the first 5 years that I had my agency, I never did PR for myself. I never did PR for my firm or anything. And then in 4 years ago, I actually did a huge PR campaign because I just let the world know my story. And, what happened when I got myself into debt and when I lost my corporate job and during the financial crisis and how bad it sucked and all of that. And because of that, I was able to get features, in Inc. and Forbes and Entrepreneur, and just letting the world know that it's okay to be vulnerable and to see your story and to let them know that you failed too, or whatever challenges you encountered. So it's good to be buttoned up for conservative or very professional media like The Economist, the Financial Times. But if you want to get into Bustle and BuzzFeed and kind of like those quirky national publications, Refinery 29, and even entrepreneurial publications, Entrepreneur, Inc., Forbes, the editor needs to be able to see the human side of you.
Absolutely. And this can be a painful thing, but what I encourage you to do is go through and start highlighting story points from your own life. In movie lingo, we call this like a movie timeline. And what's really interesting is when you break down a film, you do it in what are called strips. So like my dad's breaking down a film right now, actually. But what you do—
It's so cool.
Right? It's really neat. You go through and you figure out, okay, scene by scene. And each scene is either interior or exterior, and it has a specific page count, specific characters, and then what's going on. And you can actually rearrange them on a board. And so that's what I really like to do. So you can take like age 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, whatever, and write down the interesting things, good and bad, that happened to you. Because then what you can do is go like, oh, I can incorporate this into my story. That's why I can talk about film from the exciting side of following my dad on movie sets around the world. It's so glamorous. And then I can talk about being a stand-in for 10 years and having to like stop for one of the reasons because I had to wear heels to match the actress's height and working one day 17 hours and the entire day only making like $300. So that's the stuff that people go, oh my God, but then they go, oh my God, I'm in a horrible job too. Like it helps them relate to you. So don't be afraid to go back and look at those key characteristics of your story, because what would be more attractive to you as a listener if I were to say 5 ways to be successful as an entrepreneur in your first year versus here are the 5 ways that you can live on the cheap the first year of building your business. Which one are you going to read, right? So it's all about how you phrase these things. So don't feel afraid. Know that with this information, you're so much more empowered to actually land that feature by doing everything that we're talking about.
Right.
I feel like that was like a mic drop moment.
I agree. I thought it was well said.
Thanks, girl. So in terms of what do you think is one of the things that you see often that can be very frustrating from your clients that you wish that they had a little bit more self-empowerment around, whether that's specific characteristics of their photo shoot or their branding or, you know, their mission statement or whatever that you wish that they were able to put a little bit more work into? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I actually have a bunch, but my 2 biggest are not having your brand developed enough. You know, a good friend of mine, just to give you some context, a good friend of mine, she's 28 years old. She's the CEO of this tech company based here in New York. And she had come to me for representation, I don't know, I guess it was 8 months ago. And beautiful girl, well-spoken. The company's been around for 2 years. But her objectives didn't align with what publicity can do, particularly the type of press that she was looking for. So I told her, I said, Esty, I said, you're here too early. I said, you're not ready for PR. I said, you guys can handle it internally, but I said, you're not ready for a full-fledged PR campaign with a dedicated publicist working for you full-time. She got a little upset, but you know what?
Reality.
She's ready. You know, she's a good friend of mine. I will definitely work with her. So you need to make sure that you have your brand developed enough. The other thing is whether you work with a PR person or you're going to end up doing the PR process yourself, you need to make sure that you have the time to dedicate to writing, feature Q&As, because in the world of digital, publications are always looking for content and they're going to want you to fill out Q&As. So you need to make time for that. You need to make time to do podcasts. You need to make time to book and to follow through doing radio, television, if that's a possibility for you. Also writing bylines. I know writing articles and op-eds takes a ton of time. Trust me, I get it. It takes me an hour to an hour and a half to write one 750-word article from idea to completion. And it's time consuming and it's annoying, but at the end of the day, if you can get your article featured on entrepreneur.com, you may not get the traffic that you want, but you get that third-party endorsement, and you also get that bout of confidence. So you have to be willing to commit the time to actually getting shit done. because stuff doesn't happen on its own. And I cannot tell you how many clients I've worked with throughout the years that have said to me, oh my God, Kristin, I never knew how much time this was going to take.
Oh, it's a beast.
Yeah.
It is a beast, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're talking about this. It does take a lot of time commitment. And so if you're looking at, well, what does this realistically look like? It looks like realistically about 2 days of your week, because one day would be dedicated to interviews and, writing and all that kind of stuff. And then the other day would be, reaching out, following up, getting everything organized, getting those appointments booked. So definitely recommend Asana for this. We talk about this a little bit in the book, just so that you can stay on track. That's how we're actually staying in communication for our launch, so that we can keep everything organized, because otherwise it's a minefield, right?
Yeah.
So it does take a lot of time, but you can serve your publicist by staying organized, staying on top of things, and getting things right back to them, so they're not having to remind you. That's what I always tried to do. Like when Kristin was especially running things for me, is like, let me work my butt off so that you have everything, because you also have a million other things going on. And understand that too, like an editor that you're pitching, same thing happens. And I have some people that'll like pitch my show, and the next day they're like, well, did you get my email? Then the next day they're like, you still haven't, responded to my email.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm totally kidding, because people submit when they're not ready and they don't understand. So it's like, you try to be very kind and sweet, but you have to remember that like these are people that have very busy lives and a lot going on. So every time you follow up, it's out of kindness and providing them as much information and value as you can.
Yeah. For sure. It's crazy, but if you want press, it's not going to happen on its own. And that's why the amount of time and strategy and follow-up, that's why PR people, PR agencies charge so much money, because it's so time consuming.
Oh yeah.
It really is a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, I'm glad I have the PR background to do all the legwork for this, for this campaign.
Absolutely. Oh my God, I'd be lost without you.
Oh, thank you.
And then she's like, Michelle, go build the funnel. I'm like, okay.
Right. You're really good with that stuff.
We're a good team.
Press strategy stuff.
So what I love about what we talked about in this episode is a lot of different mistakes and misnomers and all that kind of stuff, but you also have been able to hear some of the things that you can start doing. Of course, we'll go over this more in the book, and remember, you can reserve your copy at publicityjumpstart.com. We would love for you to do that and let us know what you think. But the most important thing that we can say to you is, a lot of people are so into the creative side of their business, creating, that they don't have the building blocks in place. So please don't make the mistake of feeling such overwhelm of everything that you're creating, everything you're doing, that you give away your power in terms of getting your own publicity and press. You can do this yourself. If you're not able to hire a publicist right now, that's okay. Just do your homework, get your brand fully ready and functional, get your visibility strategy with social media in place, get your offerings in place so that you can direct traffic somewhere so that you can make income, and then start slowly but surely submitting to podcasts and summits and articles and features and Q&As and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the journey you need to go on. And I don't think that in our industry, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kristin, that's enforced enough. It's like, just give us the money for the program, which is $5,000-$6,000, and we'll get you featured here, here, and here, but it doesn't emphasize what needs to be built before.
Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. They kind of go from, step 1 to step 10, and then they bypass steps, 2 through 9.
Exactly.
And you can't do that. I love coaching entrepreneurs from start to finish on their publicity strategies. I actually like it more than developing strategies and executing them. Because really, when you're coaching somebody or you're teaching somebody kind of like the ins and outs of the industry and how to deal with different editors at different publications, and they actually do get a story run, on like CNN.com or today.com. I mean, they are just so proud of themselves and they're so thankful for your help, whereas when you're being an executor, you're hired as a publicist, it's a little different, because you're working with multiple clients and you're executing multiple campaigns. And it's like, every 5 minutes you have runs coming up because you have like 30 clients, there's always something going on. But when you have that one-to-one camaraderie, it really is, especially for me, very gratifying.
Yeah. And I think that that's a huge reason why you got into the entrepreneur space and started doing things with your different classes and now this book and all that, is because we want you to have that win. There's nothing more exciting for me than when someone who's terrified and has never been on a camera that's able to finally get on camera and sell their stuff and talk about their message. There's girls who literally would break out in hives going through the Comfy on Camera Challenge the first time, who now have their own talk shows on Facebook Live. And it's just so cool for me. And I know for Kristin, when she sees people out there able to get their own press, it's just as rewarding for her.
Yeah.
So that's why we teamed up. That's why we're so passionate about this book. And we hope that you've gotten so much value from today's episode. We would love to hear what you think. Give us a review and be sure to join the Facebook group. There's so much action that's going to be happening in there this month. So be sure to join. That's the Visible Entrepreneur. Kristin and I are in there, so we are able to answer your questions. And we'll be doing a couple live streams in there this month so that we can have a bunch of fun. So any last parting wisdom, my darling? Hit us.
Yeah, if you're gonna start a PR campaign, don't get frustrated when you don't hear back from an editor. Even if you follow up, several times, it's gonna happen. It's just part of the nature of the way that the industry works. You end up pitching 100 different editors and you get zero interest, which will happen. Just persevere, be consistent, and be patient, and I promise you will get the results that you need or that you want so that you can leverage the power of PR to grow your business even more.
Yes. Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here for today's episode. We are in book launch this entire month, so be sure to reserve your copy at publicity.Jumpstart.com. We have some really exciting guests coming up, including Heather Havenwood, Ashley Love. We have my friend Angela J. Ford, who's an author, coming up at the end of the month, and the amazing Mark Moore, who wrote our foreword, is coming on as well. So be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And in the meantime, we will be seeing you next week. I hope you loved this episode as much as I did. Now, we're all about building a tribe here at The Visible Entrepreneur, so be sure to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and then head on over to the Facebook group. It's a great place where you can practice your video, live stream, and really enjoy the community that we have built. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next episode. Now get out there and get more visible.
That's a wrap.